The medieval history of Serbia begins in the 6th century with the Slavic invasion of the Balkans, and lasts until the Ottoman occupation of 1540. Early Middle Ages. Slavic invasion. The Slavs invaded Balkans during Justinian I's rule, and eventually up to 100,000 Slavs raided Thessaloniki. The Western Balkans were settled by Sklavna, the East by Antes. The Sklavenois plundered Thrace in 545. In 551, the Slavs passed Nis and initially headed for Thessaloniki, but ended up in Dalmatia. During the 6th and 7th centuries, Slavic tribes made 8 attempts to take Nis, and in the final attack in 615 the Slavs took the city. Menander Protector mentions a king of the Sklavenois, Dorincius, who killed an Avar envoy of Kargan Bayan I. The Avars asked the Slavs to accept their suzerainty, but Dorincius declined and is reported as saying, "Others do not conquer our land, we conquer theirs, so it shall always be for us." In 577 some 100,000 Slavs poured into Thrace and Illyricum, pillaging cities and settling there. By the 580s, as the Slav communities on the Danube became larger and more organized, and the Avars exerted their influence, raids became larger and resulted in permanent settlement. In 586, as many as 100,000 Slav warriors raided Thessaloniki. By 581, many Slavic tribes had settled the land around Thessaloniki, though never taking the city itself, creating a Macedonian Sclavinia. As John of Ephesus tells us in 581, the accursed people of the Slavs set out and plundered all of Greece, the regions surrounding Thessaloniki, and Thrace, taking many towns and castles, laying waste, burning, pillaging, and seizing the whole country. Archaeological evidence in Serbia and Macedonia shows that the White Serbs may have reached the Balkans earlier than thought, between 550 to 600, as many findings of Fibulaean pottery at Roman forts point to Serbian characteristics and thus could have represent traces of either part of the Byzantine Foederatia or a fraction of the early invading Slavs who, upon organizing in their refuge of the Dinarides, formed the ethnogenesis of Serbs and were pardoned by the Byzantine Empire after acknowledging their suzerainty. According to Constantine Porphyrogenitus, a Byzantine emperor of the 10th century, the White Serbs migrated from White Serbia and initially settled around the region of Thessaloniki. This was not to their liking, and they instead settled a region farther south, a large proportion of what had been the Roman province of Illyricum. On the Adriatic coast, these Serbs formed 4 coastal principalities known as Neretva, Zahumlja, Konavli and Trebinj Duklja. Inland, they were given land to settle in what is now Serbia. It retained the old name of Serbia, often called baptized Serbia by the Byzantines, because it was Christianized. Serbs were resettled by the Byzantines in the mid-7th century to Asia Minor, where the town of Gordosavone was mentioned in 680. Constantine's work, De Administranda Imperia, has attracted intense academic debate. On one hand, some scholars hold it to be a true account of the period, thus concluding that Neretvians, Zaklumians, Dukshans, Travunians and southeastern Bosnians are descendants of Serbs that took on new tribal names, and due to geographical and political factors developed an often independent history from Ruska, the region of Serbia proper that became synonymous with the name Serbia from the 12th century onwards. Others argue that Constantine's account may have merely been a reflection of the political situation during his time, whereby his liege Kaslav, Klonomirovich wielded command over the various Slavic lands south of the Cetin and Biar rivers. Moreover, although possible, there is little archaeological evidence supporting a long-distance Serb migration from White Serbia, and indeed little evidence that a political entity known as White Serbia actually existed. There were a few South Slavic tribes in the Middle Ages that had contemporary namesakes among Western and Eastern Slavic tribes, such as the Croats, Severians and Abodrites. We do not know whether it actually represented a shared identity. Florin Curtis suggests that the Serbs might have been a clan of Slavic-speaking warriors, who formed within the Balkans, and slowly extended the power, and hence their name, over a greater territory. The early history of Serbia is characterized by one of fluctuating borders and shifting centers of rule. For much of this period, there were several Serb states existing at any one time. Daniele Farlati used the term Serbia Primorje when referring to the coastal provinces, while he called the interior part Serbia Zagorje. The two most prominent Serb states were Duklja and Ruska. They provided the territorial nucleus for a succession of Serb kingdoms that in the 13th century were consolidated under the Nemanjic dynasty. Centered in Ruska, the Nemanjics ushered a golden period in Serbian history, whereby it became a dominant Balkan power. Medieval Greek and Latin historiographers call the Serbians tribally. This does not necessarily indicate a relation of Serbians with the ancient tribe with the same name. Launakos Chorkokandila says that at his time the tribal inland is around the area where River Morava meets Istris River. First Serbian Principality. Upon their initial arrival, the Slavs formed no uniform political organization, but rather remained divided into many tribes of various sizes, referred to as Sclavenia by the Byzantines. These groups were led by native chiefs. Perhaps the tribes were organized into zupa, a form of territorial organization learned from the native Illyrians, being roughly equivalent to a county. Each zupa consisted of several villages, linked by clan relationships. An embryonic Serbian state formed in the 9th century. At this time, the Bulgarian Khanate was expanding westward, and had already installed Bulgar despots over the Slavic tribes which inhabited what is present-day northern Serbia, the Srem region and eastern Slavonia. At the same time, it pushed into Macedonia from the south, effectively encircling the Serbs. As a response to this, with Byzantine support, a few Serbian Jupa united defensively under the lead of Knez Vlastimir, the founder of the Vlastimirovich dynasty. The extent and location of this early Serb principality is not known with certainty, but it probably lay in present-day southern Serbia and southeastern Bosnia, in the difficult country between the rivers Drina and Abar. In between the Serb principality and the Adriatic coastline existed three minor principalities: Travunia, Zaclumia and Pagania. At this time Duklja did not exist as a political entity, as its eastern parts were part of Vlastimir's realm while the coastal cities were ruled by Byzantine governors. To the north, the Croats were beginning to consolidate into a principality, while to the east loomed the Bulgarian Empire. Archaeological evidence shows that the fort of Ras marked the early Serb-Bulgarian border. The Bulgarian invasion came sometime in the 840s, but was repelled by Knez Vlastimir. Vlastimir gave his daughter's hand to the son of the Jupan of Travunia, Balais. This established a long-lasting allegiance. Travunia henceforth acknowledged Serbia's authority, and was incorporated in Serbia as a semi-independent principality. Vlastimir's sons, Mutimir, Gojnik and Stomir, defeated another Bulgarian attack c. 853, capturing Khan Boris's son, Vladimir, and 12 leading Bulgars. They escorted Vladimir to Ras, at the Serb-Bulgarian border, exchanged gifts and concluded a peace treaty. However, this early princedom was far from a consolidated, centralized state, and the various Jupans retained considerable independence. Rather than practicing primogeniture, Slavic rulers practiced stareshina, where rule fell upon the eldest person in the extended family. The realm would then be split between the surviving brothers, sons, nephews and cousins. Such tradition repeatedly caused succession strife. Sometime after defeating the Bulgarians, Mutimir ousted his brothers. He kept Gojnik's son Peter in his court, but he managed to escape to Croatia. Mutimir ruled until 890, being succeeded by his son Pravoslav. However, Pravoslav was overthrown by Peter Gojniković, who had returned from his exile in Croatia c. 892. The name Peter is Christian, suggesting that Christianity had started to permeate into Serbia, undoubtedly through Serbia's contacts with the Bulgarians and Byzantines. Peter secured himself on the throne and was recognized by Tsar Simeon of Bulgaria. An alliance was signed between the two states. Already having Travunia's loyalty, Peter began to expand his state north and west. He annexed the Bosna River Valley, and then moved west, securing allegiance from the pagans, who were fiercely independent, pirateering Slavs. However, Peter's expansion into Dalmatia brought him into conflict with Prince Michael of Zahumlia. Michael had also grown powerful, ruling not only Zaclumia, but exerting his influence over Travunia and Dioclea. Porphyrogenitus explains that Michael's roots were different from Vlastimirovici, and was unwilling to yield authority to Peter. Although allied to Simeon, Peter became increasingly disgruntled by the fact that he was essentially subordinate to him. Peter's expansion toward the coast facilitated contacts with the Byzantines, by way of the Strategos of Dyrrhachium, searching for allies against Bulgaria. The Byzantines showered Peter with gold and promises of greater independence if he would join their alliance, a convincing strategy. Peter might have been planning an attack on Bulgaria with the Magyars, showing that his realm had stretched north to the Sava River. However, Michael of Zahumlia forewarned Simeon of this plan, since Michael was an enemy of Peter, and a loyal vassal of Simeon. What followed was multiple Bulgarian interventions and a succession of Serb rulers. Simeon attacked Serbia and deposed Peter, placing Pavel Branović as Prince of Serbia, subordinate to Simeon. Unhappy with this, the Byzantines then sent Zaharij Pravoslav Ilyevich in 920 to oust Pavel, but he failed and was sent to Bulgaria as prisoner. The Byzantines then succeeded in turning Prince Pavel to their side. In turn, the Bulgarians started indoctrinating Zaharij. Zaharij invaded Serbia with a Bulgarian force, and ousted his cousin Pavel in 922. However, he too turned to Byzantium. A punitive force sent by the Bulgarians was defeated. Zaharij sent the heads of the Bulgarian generals to Emperor Romanus as a sign of his loyalty to the Byzantines. Thus we see a continuous cycle of dynastic strife among Vlastimir's successors, stirred on by the Byzantine and Bulgarians, who were effectively using the Serbs as pawns. While Bulgarian help was more effective, Byzantine help seemed preferable. Simeon made peace with the Byzantines to settle affairs with Serbia once and for all. Frustrated by the traitorous smaller neighbor militarily, the Bulgarians decided to finish the things once and for all. In 924, he sent a large army accompanied by Kaslav, son of Clonomir. The army forced Zaharij to flee to Croatia. The Serbian Jupans were then summoned to recognize Kaslav as the new prince. When they came, however, they were all imprisoned and taken to Bulgaria, as too was Kaslav. Much of Serbia was ravaged, and many people fled to Croatia, Bulgaria and Constantinople. Simeon made Serbia into a Bulgarian province, so that Bulgaria now bordered Croatia and Zahumlia. He then resolved to attack Croatia, because it was a Byzantine ally and had sheltered the Serbian prince. At the Battle of the Bosnian Highlands, Croatia's King Tomislav defeated the Bulgarians, while Prince Michael of Zahumlia maintained neutrality. During the fall of Central Serbia, Michael was the preeminent Serb prince, having been awarded the honorary title of Patriarchos by the Byzantine emperor, and may have ruled over Zaclumia, Travunia and Dioclea. The Bulgarian subjugation of Serbia was for only 3 years. After Simeon died, Kaslav Clonomirovich led Serb refugees back to Serbia. He secured the allegiance of the Dalmatian duchies and expelled Bulgarian rule from central Serbia. After Tomislav's death, Croatia was in near anarchy as his sons vied for sole rule, so Časlav was able to extend his rule north to the Vardar River. During this apogee of Serbian power, Christianity and culture penetrated Serbia as the Serb prince lived in peaceful and cordial relations with the Byzantines. However, strong as it had grown to be, Serbia's power was only as strong as its ruler. There was no centralized rule, but was more a confederacy of Slavic principalities. The existence of the unified Grand Principality was dependent on the allegiance of the lesser princes to Časlav. When he died defending Bosnia against Magyar incursions, the coalition disintegrated. The various Jupans and princes previously loyal to Časlav undoubtedly tried to carve out their own realms, falling into conflict with each other. We do not know the details, and we do not know the names of any rulers, perhaps because no one was prominent enough to be noted. We do know that in the 990s, Jovan Vladimir rose as the most powerful Serbian noble, carving out a principality centered on the coast of modern Montenegro. This state became known as Duklja, after the ancient Roman town of Dukli. However, by 997, it had been conquered and made subject to Bulgaria again by Tsar Samuel. When the Byzantines finally defeated the Bulgarians, they regained control over most of the Balkans for the first time in 4 centuries. Serbian lands were governed by a strategos presiding over the theme of Sirmium. However, local Serbian princes continued to reign as suzerains to the Byzantines, maintaining total autonomy over their lands, such as the Jupanate of Raška, while only nominally being Byzantine vassals. Forts were maintained in Belgrade, Sirmium, Nis and Branicevo. These were, for the most part, in the hands of local nobility, which often revolted against Byzantine rule. High Middle Ages. Emergence and fall of Duklja under the Vojislav Ilijević. For the next 150 years, the mantle of leadership of the Serbs passed to the coastal areas, where the Principality of Duklja had arisen. The dynasty began by Prince Stefan Vojislav created a powerful and influential state that took all Serbian lands from under the Byzantine rule. During this time, we know very little about the events in Serbia's Zagorje, because Byzantine attention was focused primarily on the coastal Serbs. Duklja was also the first Serbian kingdom, which gained international recognition. Prince Mihailo received the king's crown from the Pope in 1077. His successor King Bohdan enlarged the domain, but the kingdom of Duklja didn't last for a long time. Byzantine Empire conquers Duklja in 1101. Vukanović dynasty. The Serbian Grand Principality, also known as Raška, was founded in 1090, and ended with the elevation to kingdom in 1217. During the reign of Constantine Bohdan, the king of Duklja, Vukan was appointed to rule Raška as a vassal, and when Bohdan was captured by the Byzantines, Vukan became independent and took the title of Grand Prince. When Bohdan had died, Raška became the strongest entity, in which the Serbian realm would be seated, in hands of the Vukanović dynasty. Uros I, the son of Vukan, ruled Serbia when the Byzantines invaded Duklja, and Raška would be next in line. But with diplomatic ties with the Kingdom of Hungary, Serbia retained its independence. Uros II initially fought the Byzantines, but after a defeat soon gives oaths of servitude to the emperor. Disa, the brother of Uros II and an initial Byzantine ally, turned to Hungarian support, but was deposed in 1163. When Stefan Tihomir of a cadet line was put on the throne by the emperor. Nemanjic dynasty. Stefan Nemanja was succeeded by his middle son, Stefan, while his firstborn son Vukan was given the rule of the Zeta region. Stefan Nemanja's youngest son Rastko became a monk and took the name Sava, turning all his efforts to spread religion among his people. Since the Roman Catholic Church already had ambitions to spread its influence to the Balkans as well, Stefan used these propitious circumstances to obtain his crown from the Pope, thereby becoming the first Serbian king, in 1217. In Byzantium, his brother Sava managed to secure autocephaly for the Serbian Church and became the first Serbian archbishop in 1219. In the same year Sava published the first constitution in Serbia, St. Sava's Nomikanon. This legal act was well developed. St. Sava's Nomikanon was the compilation of civil law, based on Roman law and canon law, based on ecumenical councils, and its basic purpose was to organize functioning of the young Serbian kingdom and the Serbian Church. Thus the Serbs acquired both forms of independence, political and religious. The next generation of Serbian rulers, the sons of Stefan Privovenkani, Radoslav, Vladislav and Urusai, marked a period of stagnation of the state's structure. All three kings were more or less dependent on some of the neighboring states, Byzantium, Bulgaria or Hungary. The ties with the Hungarians played a decisive role in the fact that Urusai was succeeded by his son Dragutin, whose wife was a Hungarian princess. Later on, when Dragutin abdicated in favor of his younger brother Milutin, the Hungarian king Ladislaus IV gave him lands in northeastern Bosnia, the region of Makva, and the city of Belgrade, while he managed to conquer and annex lands in northeastern Serbia. Thus, some of these territories became part of the Serbian state for the first time. His new state was named Kingdom of Srem. In that time the name Srem was a designation for two territories, Upper Srem and Lower Srem. Kingdom of Srem under the rule of Stefan Dragutin was actually Lower Srem, but some historical sources mention that Stefan Dragutin also ruled over Upper Srem and Slavonia. After Dragutin died, the new ruler of the Kingdom of Srem became his son, King Vladislav II, who ruled this state until 1325. Under the rule of Dragutin's younger brother, King Milutin, Serbia grew stronger despite having to occasionally fight wars on three different fronts. King Milutin was an apt diplomat, much inclined to the use of a customary medieval diplomatic and dynastic marriages. He was married 5 times, with Hungarian, Bulgarian and Byzantine princesses. He is also famous for building churches, some of which are the finest examples of medieval Serbian architecture. The Gracanica Monastery in Kosovo, the Cathedral in Holanda Monastery on Mount Athos, the St. Archangel Church in Jerusalem, etc. Because of his endowments, King Milutin has been proclaimed a saint, in spite of his tumultuous life.